What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another great episode of the Tight Lines Podcast, and welcome to spring bass fishing. Woo! All right. In most of the United States, we are getting into water temps that indicate the greatest time, or one of the greatest times of the year, pre-spawn bass fishing. And spring is such a magical time of the year. It's big fish that want to get bigger before making little fish. So we're talking about just Goliath fish. This is the time where you go out and you break your PB. So we're going to today talk about three. Yes, just three. I'm not talking about a bunch. Just three simple, great baits that you can throw to catch your PB fish during pre-spawn. We will talk brands, we'll talk colors, techniques, combos, and so much more. So stick around and enjoy another information-packed episode of the Tight Lines Podcast.
Welcome to the Tight Lines Podcast, your destination for anything fishing. Now here's your host, Tyler Plackey.
All right, so pre-spawn bass fishing. It is that time of the year that bass are packing on the pounds and trying to get ready for spawn time. They're moving out of their winter patterns. They're starting to come up a little more shallow, all in preparation for spawn. So during this time, what did I say they're doing? That's right. They are gorging on whatever bait they can find. Craws, bluegill, shad, other bass, birds, insects. It doesn't matter. They need to eat so they can survive spawn. And that, right there, ladies and gentlemen, is when we capitalize and catch our PBs. But to catch our PBs, we need to be throwing the right baits. So what do we throw? That comes down to a lot of factors, right? It comes down to water temp, water color, depth, weather conditions, and so much more. So the following three baits I'm going to recommend will kind of cover everything, right? Quick on pre-spawn. Pre-spawn, typically the water's starting to come up a bit, getting into the upper 40s, low 50s. Decently clear, but sometimes, a lot of rain in the spring, so sometimes the water gets blown out and gets real muddy. It's going to be a bit windy, bunch of different changing conditions going on. So these baits can kind of be used in a broad spectrum of fishing conditions. So let's get into it. Again, three baits. Bait number one, this one is the most specific one we're going to talk about. I'm going to recommend an exact bait to you guys. We're not going to talk about a specific genre of bait like we will some other ones. This one is the exact bait. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Rapala OG Tiny 4. So, like I said, very specific, but there's a reason for that. The first reason, obviously, is I absolutely love this bait. This is a great bait from Rapala. It's a small 2¼ inch balsa crankbait with a circuit board lip on it. It runs about 4 feet deep, hence calling it the Tiny 4. And the OG comes from Ott Defo. He created this bait. OG comes from Ott's Garage. It's the Tiny, and it drives 4 foot. So before we get too far into this, since we're talking specifically about a certain bait here, this will be a bit different of a setup than the other two we'll talk about. Let's hear a bit about it from Rapala. Here's what they say. From a passion of bait building as a childhood hobby to customizing lures as a professional angler, the OG series is born from the sawdust of Ott Defo's garage. The Rapala Tiny is a thin, flat-sided balsa bait with a tight wobble and finesse-like action. This thin design and lightweight circuit board lip moves less water and provides a sensitive feel of bottom structure. Features from it are the construction, it's a premium balsa wood and a circuit board lip. Features are it's a silent, non-rattling, flat-sided body, and it floats since it's a balsa bait. The action is it's a tight wobble with a very finesse-like action. It's very, very small, very minimal movement. Target species, obviously bass and multi-freshwater species. And terminal tackle, it has VMC Black Nickel 1X strong treble hybrid hooks. So really nice hooks on it as well. So why are these features important? So, in this time of year, finesse is still key. We're not out power fishing, we're not throwing, giant, whopper ploppers and buzz baits and spooks and, all this crazy stuff. We're still a little finesse, right? The water's still cold. Fish are chasing, but they're not going absolutely bonkers yet, right? It's still that weird time period. So they need something that's going to come right past them. The flat sides give a very nice tight wobble that we talked about, and the balsa construction of it makes it very buoyant. So it's really easy to pull over down tree limbs, bounce off rock, let it float to the top. Really super simple. This is going to fish very similar to a lipless crankbait, but a little bit tighter wobble, a little bit different dive. This is a very good cross between a lipless crankbait and like a square bill, but also a little bit less movement on it. So it really is a really good bait. It comes in 19 colors, but some of my favorites are Big Shad, Citrus Shad, Classic Craw, Helsinki Shad, Coosa Special, and Perch. These are some pretty natural colors here. Pretty nice combos. Get some chartreuses in there. You're getting some normal shad patterns. Really, really good colors to kind of cover everything you need. Also, price-wise, the OG Tiny 4 is in the 12 to 13 price range per bait. So again, a bit more expensive, but it is a really, really good bait in all honesty, and I really like it. Setup-wise, I'm throwing this on 10-pound fluorocarbon. I'm using the CR Basics fluorocarbon. I use very basic fluorocarbon here. I have a 7-to-1 gear ratio bait casting reel. It's a Shimano Curado MGL 150, and I've got a medium heavy, moderate fast 7-foot Dobbins rod. Doesn't require any special cranking setups. Doesn't dive super deep. Heck, you can throw this on a medium action or medium power spinning bait or spinning reel if you want. But I just like it on this setup, and we'll talk about why later on as we talk about the other baits. Technique wise, it's super simple. You just chuck and wind. You can throw this anywhere and everywhere. It's going to bounce off stuff really well because it's ball sand, because of the circuit board. It's going to go through grass real well, open water, big chunk rock, laydowns. Like I said, literally anywhere. And during pre-spawn, this is a really good bait. Again, natural colors and clear water. It really does good at all speeds. It's really good at slow speeds where it kind of has like that meandering bait fish action, but also at high speeds as well when it looks like a fleeing bait fish. I'll mix the cadences throughout, but I'll never switch it during a single retrieve. So if I cast down, I've got slow retrieve, I'm slow retrieving all the way through. Just like we've talked about with blade baits and with spinner baits and with every other bait, chatter baits, we're not really changing the retrieve as we go through the single retrieve. It's in between casts when you can change it a lot. This is really good. Again, it's just kind of mimicking a small bait fish. You're going to want to, I use this kind of as a search bait, which is really nice. And all three baits we'll talk about today are kind of search baits. And then you can obviously change up and throw other baits if you want to. Once you find the fish, they're kind of sitting in one point. You can maybe drop a Ned rig in. There's other things you can do. But these are, this is one of those baits that this time of the year, I'm really going out and using to just hammer fish. So bait number one, numero uno here, is going to be the OG Tiny 4 from Rapala. Number two is a bait that we've already kind of talked about in here, I've hinted to. That is the lipless crankbait. Very similar to the first one. Also known as the rattle trap, the lipless crankbait is another great bait. Gear-wise, they're on the same gear. We are chucking it and winding it. We're throwing on the same exact combo we just talked about. 10-pound fluorocarbon, throwing on a 7-to-1 gear ratio casting reel, and we're throwing on a 7-foot medium heavy moderate fast casting rod. Mine's my Dobbins Maverick. It's the 705 CB if you want to get the exact one I'm running, but pretty simple here. The main, technique wise, very similar. The main difference is going to talk about covering in depth, and then where you're throwing it into and the depth you're throwing it at, and also the ability to rip. For me, if I'm, one of the big things here is this is really good around grass, right? So if I'm fishing grass cover, I will do something called the straight retrieve and then rip technique. We've talked about this with like a blade bait before and with chatter baits. Super simple. Cast it out, reel it in. When you feel that resistance at grass, give it a good hard pull, almost like your pull start a chatter bait that doesn't want to fire up, and rip it right out of that grass. And at that point, as that bait rips out, typically eager fish will kind of fire up at it. They'll get really excited about it. That just seems to work really well as it kind of shoots out of that grass. That's when fish seem to really kind of go crazy. Another way that you can, so that's obviously the first way to alter the presentation. Sorry, I'm kind of jumbling here. Really excited about fishing right now, if you guys can't tell. The other way to alter the presentation that you can't do with the OG Tiny 4 is to change the running depth. So obviously being able to change running depth is a huge thing. In the OG Tiny 4, it runs at 4-foot depth, or 3.5 to 4 foot depth every time. That's kind of the point of the bait of it being a Tiny 4, is it runs to 4 foot. With a lipless crankbait, you can change the depth that you're running it at. which allows you to target different areas of the water column, which is obviously a humongous thing. And there's two ways you can change the running depth, actually. The first one is the speed of your retrieval. Duh, right? Every time you guys fish anything with weight that you're straight retrieving, the faster you retrieve it, the higher it stays in the water column. The slower you retrieve it, it's deeper in the water column. Not terribly effective because sometimes, you want to run it fast and deep. Sometimes you want to run it high and slow. So it doesn't help a ton, but it is a bit of a difference. The second and obviously much more effective way to manipulate the height or the depth of your running of your bait within the water column is where you have your rod tip, right? So if you want it to run deeper in the water column, you keep your rod tip down. You want to run higher up in the water column, you keep the rod tip up. It's very simple. And what's nice with that is then you can run it a bit faster and lower if you've got your tip down and you're really letting it bury and dig down into the water. If you want it to run high and slow, you can really pull that rod tip up in the air, and it'll kind of stay up a bit. Really pretty simple stuff. So now moving on to colors. Again, we've talked techniques, we've talked combos, we're going to talk colors and brands here. First, we're going to talk colors and we'll talk brands and sizes. For me, I divide the colors into two categories. The first one is my natural colors, and the second is my standout colors. Obviously, right? Again, it's like, well, duh. But for me, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So for natural colors, I'm running shad and bluegill patterns. Typically not running bass patterns here. I like my shad patterns, my chromes with a little bit of black and blue mixed in, maybe some gold if I'm trying to be, look more like bluegill. And for standouts, I'm running red. Red in the spring works. We all know it does. Why it does, there's a ton of argument over that. If it's because of how craws are molting, if it's the watercolor, if it's just something in a bass. Not sure. Red works. I'm not going to argue it. I'm going to fish red in the spring. Size-wise, I'm throwing between a 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce usually. I'm not going to run any lighter than a 3/8 ounce, and typically more than a 1/2 ounce, you are really throwing a very heavy lipless crankbait. And for that, I'm going to beef up the rod a bit, obviously. So for my setup, 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce is what I run. Going into brands, my first brand that I love is the Booyah lipless crankbaits. They have a couple kinds. They have the hard knocker, they have the one knocker, both of which are great. They also have a silent version. Some of my favorite colors from them are chrome black, gold shiner, and blue shiner. Really nice kind of, good shad patterns, very natural colors, nothing too crazy. Pretty simple and self-explanatory. Another great bait that's kind of a hidden one that you may not know about is the Mock Baits Slackjaw. That is the Mock Baits version of the lipless crankbait. And I love their fire crawl presentation that they have. Really, really nice, like deep red with a little bit of orange and black mixed in. Really, really killer in like murkier waters. Running it, after a rainstorm, running it up shallow along where fish are starting to get ready to bed. Really, really good time here. I've caught a bunch of fish on blown out waters in the spring with this bait. Works great. Finally, the third one that I'm going to go with, this one's a little bit more expensive. We've started cheap with the Booyah lipless. Those are about $6 or $7. The Mock Baits Slackjaw you can get anywhere between $5 and $10 depending on. I got mine at Ollie's for like $5, but you can, they're $10 in most spots. Finally, the more expensive side here, we're going with the Spro Uruku shad. Again, a bit more expensive. These are in the 13 to 14 range for lipless crankbait. I get they're expensive. I bought mine on a deal, so not too mad about that. But they do have a great variety of sizes and colors. They have like a 60 size, a 65, a 75. I think they have like 4 or 5 total different sizes here. I like the 65 millimeter size. I think that runs right at the 1/2 ounce. It's about as big as I'm going to want to throw. Any bigger, it just feels like it drags at the bottom and it's just too big. I'm still trying to run a little bit finessey here. I love the Western Craw color, which is this really great deep red color. And then the chrome blue as well is a really excellent shad presentation. I run both of those. They've both been killing it for me. Great, great baits here. So that was our second bait selection that we were talking about, and that was the lipless crankbait or the rattle trap. And the third and final one we're going to talk about is another obvious one for the spring, and it is the spinnerbait. We're going to talk about the good old classic spinnerbait. Obviously, recently there's been a ton of debate on spinnerbait versus chatterbait, and this is a tough debate, but not in the spring. In the spring, it is super, super simple for me. Spinnerbait. The chatterbait just doesn't get it done in the spring, I don't think. Doesn't do what I need it to do. It's okay. For me, I love a good double willow spinnerbait. Not huge on the Colorado blade at this time of the year. And a little trick I'm going to give you guys here. This is some juice, so turn down your volume, listen to this, don't share with your friends. Is have different colored willow blades. Have one be silver and one be gold. Not quite sure why it works, but it's killing it for me. It has done a ton for me. One silver, one gold, double willow blade works great. I'm looking for anywhere between a 1/4 ounce and a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait here. 3/8 is fine, obviously. 3/16, somewhere like that. Maybe a little too small, but I like the 1/4 to the 1/2 ounce size. Not too big, not too small. Obviously, on the paddle tail, on the back, we're going to match the color to the skirt color, and that's the icing on the cake. So, spinnerbait is, surprise, surprise, also going to be thrown on the same combo as the first two baits we've talked about. If you haven't guessed by now, this is on purpose. A lot of times I find myself frustrated because I take 4 or 5 combos with me, and it feels like all I'm doing is carrying on different rods and not being able to fish. So I want you guys to be able to take these 3 baits out on one single combo and just go catch a bunch of fish. Same combo again, 7-foot, medium heavy, moderate fast rod, 7-to-1 reel, 10-pound fluorocarbon. It's super simple, guys. Don't make it difficult. Color-wise, this is important, but again, the message I want to get across is the blades. 2 bigger willow blades, 1 gold, 1 chrome/silver. Great combo. Don't mess that up, okay? Trust me on that. The rest of the coloring, when we get to like the head color and the skirt color, there's a couple great color combos here. White and chartreuse, that's a classic. Everyone loves white chartreuse combo, especially with like a white or like a shad colored trailer on there is really good. White and light blue is another really good combo there, just that very natural shad pattern. A little bit of fire craw is always good. Some red and orange with some black mixed in, going back to what we were talking about with other fire craw patterns. That red and orange works really well. Occasionally a bluegill pattern will work really well, especially mixed with like, light colors or fire, but yeah. So bluegill works well occasionally. Go with the fire craw, go with the, white with blue or white and chartreuse. Those just work really well. Moving into brands, some of my favorite brands, honestly, the Strike King Red Eye series for like $6 a spinnerbait, tough spinnerbait to beat. Really nice double willow blade on them, really good quality, nice hook, good and heavy, wire bait. It is a really good spinnerbait. One that I found recently is the All Star Bait Company spinnerbait. Has a really cool spinnerbait out with a cool kind of EWG style hook into it. Really interested to try it out. It's been fishing well for me. Haven't caught any fish on it yet, but I haven't thrown it a ton either. It's a bit heavier. So just trying to figure out what I like there. War Eagle makes a great spinnerbait. In the spinnerbait line, I'm not typically spending Megabass money. I know there's some great brands like Battle Baits has like the minigun. They have like a finesse spinnerbait. Everyone's got a spinnerbait. You can find one from H2OX, which is the Academy brand. But I'm not spending a ton of money, obviously, and I'm also not cheaping out. I'm not a huge fan of the dollar spinnerbaits at Walmart. They're okay. They're fine. They're not my thing anymore. Trailer-wise, I'm just usually running a small paddle tail. The 3.5-inch Kitech Swing Impact in a matching color is always a good time. If you're running a bit bigger spinnerbait, you can throw on like a one of like the Rapala Mayer, I think is their paddle tail. A big Joshy swim bait. That's a bit expensive for a trailer, but another great trailer option. But something with a little bit smaller profile, but adds a nice kick at the back just to add to the presentation if it works really well. So that is our third and final bait. We'll go back through real quick 3 baits that we are talking about, or that we talked about today. One is the Rapala OG Tiny 4. Number 2, we have the lipless crankbait, and number 3 is the spinnerbait. All thrown on the same combo, all very similar, just a nice steady retrieve. Couple rips in there for the lipless crankbait. Everything else is just pretty simple. So that's today's episode for you guys. Hope you have enjoyed it. Happy pre-spawn. It's pretty much a holiday, for the fishing community, because who doesn't love catching big fish? But I really do appreciate you guys for listening to this episode, so thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, and if you've learned something, please be sure to drop a follow or a subscription wherever you listen to us at. Also drop us a positive review, whether it's a like or a 5-star or a written review. We're here on Apple, we're on Spotify, we are on iHeartRadio, Amazon, and YouTube. So if you're listening to this, congratulations, you found us on one of those sites. Like I said, please be sure to hit that follow or that subscribe button. It really does help the channel out. It helps the podcast to grow. Also, go ahead and check out my Instagram and my YouTube, both of which are Tyler Plackey Fishing. Ton of really cool stuff on there. Great videos coming your guys' way. If you follow me there, you can see what I've been up to. You can talk to me. If you want to know what's really going on in my life, that Instagram is where I update stuff. the earliest. It always goes Instagram first, typically the YouTube second, and then it'll hit the podcast third. So definitely check those out. Make sure to drop me a follow. Really do appreciate it. Again, thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in every week. Telling your friends about the show. We're growing little by little every week. Loving it. Getting some really good support. And it has been a ton of fun to put this show on for you guys, so I really do appreciate it. Your guys' support is what means everything. So thank you guys so much for listening. Go out and catch some great pre-spawn largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, whatever you're catching out there. Drop pictures in the comments. Tag me in your photos if you catch fish on one of these baits. I'd love to see it. And until next time, tight lines, y'all.